What is up, guys? It's your friendly neighborhood web war fanatic, and we are back today with another Lorcana video. Today is July 10th, and Ravensburger has officially released their first errata for a card, and they have completely changed this Bucky card right here. So I want to kind of go over the changes with you guys. I want to take a look at the community perception and just take a look at some comments from Reddit about people talking about the card, and I also want to give my opinion on the errata. So in case you guys have not heard, Bucky right here, he's a very powerful card that is dominating the meta. I just created a video in I think 2 or 3 days ago talking about the top 5 cards in the game, and Bucky was on that list. So he's definitely one of the strongest cards in the game here, and this is his pre-errata version. So he came out here with 2 cost, 1 attack, 1 life, and then he has the ward effect, so opponents cannot choose his character except to challenge it. And he also has a Squeak ability, so whenever you play a Floodborn character, each opponent chooses and discards a card. So this card has been going rampant in the meta, and in the competitive scene of Lorcana, Bucky is a huge driving force there. So basically the big combo with Bucky, and Bucky did come out in set 2 here, which we can see right here, so the Rise of the Floodborn. But a lot of the set 4 cards that recently came out, like Diablo, let me go pull them up so you guys can see. So Diablo right here is a set 4 card that just came out with Ursa's Return, as you can see right here, and then he's a 3 cost Floodborn. So basically a lot of the cheap Floodborns like Aladdin, Diablo go really well with Bucky because you can play these Floodborn characters on turn 3 or even earlier if you shift for them. And then Bucky is a 2 cost character that you can play on turn 2, so he's already in play, and then you can get his effect off immediately, very early in the game, and then you can play that Floodborn character, and each opponent must choose and discard a card. And then because of that combo, a lot of players have been feeling very oppressed when they're playing against this strategy, and a lot of people have been saying that it's just not that fun to play against Bucky because he's making you discard all the cards from your hand, and it's just not like a fun thing to not have any resources to deal with it, right? There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but a lot of people have voiced that they don't necessarily have fun with this, and I know when I'm building a deck, I always plan for Bucky, right? So whenever Bucky has, because he has Ward here, right? Most people, when they play Bucky, they don't exert him. So since he's not exerted, he can never be challenged. And since he has Ward, you cannot play something like a Dragonfire, right? And I'll pull up a Dragonfire here, in case you guys don't know what I'm talking about. So a card like Dragonfire, it's a 5-drop card. It just says banish a chosen character, right? But since Bucky back over here has Ward, you can never choose him for an effect like a Dragonfire to banish him, right? The only way to get rid of Bucky is to play cards like Grab Your Sword, a card like this, which deals 2 damage to each opposing character, because Grab Your Sword doesn't choose any character, it just does area effect damage and hits everyone on the board, all the opposing characters. So this is a good way to knock out Bucky. So whenever I am playing for a deck, I always want to put something like Grab Your Sword or another way to get rid of Bucky. There's also ways to give your characters ways to attack ready characters, right? So we take a look at Cinderella, for example. Cinderella, I'm not sure if I can find the it's going to be this one, I believe. The Cinderella right here says whenever you play a song, this character may challenge ready characters this turn, right? There's other ways to allow your characters to attack ready characters, so that would be a good way to get rid of Bucky over here, right? But because of that, there's not many ways to disrupt him, especially by turn 2, right? Like Grab Your Sword is a 5-drop card. Cinderella's a 7-drop card, right? There's not that many ways to deal with him. So because of that, he feels he ramps up really quickly, and he just feels kind of unfair. So he's a little bit difficult to manage, and because of that, he is kind of like the driving force of the meta in Lorcana. Well, Ravensburger heard a lot of the complaints about him, and they have officially errata'd him, so they've changed how this card works now. So this is the new version of Bucky. So instead of being a 2-cost character, which we saw over here, he's now a 3-cost character. He still has the 1 attack and 1 life, but he no longer has Ward. So now if you play Dragonfire, you can just pick Bucky and just get rid of him, right? If you have any other effect, I can just choose a character, do 1 damage to it, banish a character, right? If you play like a Smash or Let the Storm Rage On, you can now just choose Bucky and get rid of Bucky immediately on turn 2 or turn 3, or whenever you can play that song or that action, right? So he no longer has a Ward to protect himself. And then they even changed his Squeak ability here too. So it says here, whenever you play a Floodborn character, if you use Shift to play them, each opponent chooses and discards a card. So before, when you played a Floodborn, it's any Floodborn. You can have your opponent choose and discard a card, but now you need to shift into them. So you need to have the previous version of that Floodborn in play already, and then use their shift effect to play the new Floodborn over them. So I think that that's not too bad of an effect, but the fact that he's 3 costs now instead of 2, and the fact that he no longer has Ward definitely hurts him a lot. I think this is a huge nerf to Bucky. I don't think that he's going to be one of the top 5 cards anymore. I just released that video with him being, in the top 5, so that video definitely is not aging well, because he has immediately dropped out of that top 5 best cards category here with this huge nerf. And yeah, I mean, being 3 costs, I think is the biggest thing that really hurts him, because a lot of those strong Floodborns that we're talking about that combos well with Bucky, like Diablo. If you can shift into Diablo, then that's good. But Diablo is also a 3-cost character. So if you don't have the previous Diablo to shift into, that means you're playing this Diablo on turn 3, but now Bucky is on turn 3. So a lot of those Floodborn characters are 3 cost. So because they are, that means that you have to choose between playing Bucky or playing a Floodborn, when before, when Bucky was just 2 cost, you could put him out on turn 2, and on turn 3 you could play the 3 cost Diablo or like a lad or another strong Floodborn character to get the effect from Bucky, where you can have your opponent discard a card. So I think that also hurts him as well. And I mean, yeah, you have to shift to play them now. I mean, it's like a whole thing. So I think that Bucky, I mean, he's definitely dropped a little bit far off from being that leading, what a lot of people would argue is the strongest card in the game. I don't necessarily know if I ever had him out there, but he was definitely top 5. And yeah, I mean, he's definitely dropped off from there. So we're going to take a look at the Reddit here. And I just want to take a look at what the community kind of thinks about Bucky, and kind of the state of Lorcana and what everyone's saying about it. So someone posted the Bucky errata here, and the top comment here says, to ban Bucky, don't errata except to clarify. Also, terrible changes, it's overkill to an extreme level. Changing it to paid for shift would have been enough by itself. Also, removing Ward and increasing the cost, that's way too much. So if you guys watched my last video, I actually totally agree with this comment here, especially for the practical sense of it, because I also think that I thought that Bucky was decently balanced the way that he was. He could easily ramp up and get more overpowered through time whenever more Floodborn characters are added to the game, and especially cheap Floodborn characters. I could see him definitely having a very high potential of becoming overpowered and needing to get banned, but at least to save the meta right now, I thought that he was still decently balanced to where there are a lot of ways for him to lose, and he's not like an auto win or anything like that. So I agree with this person that changing it to paid for shift would have been enough of an errata, but they also removed the ward and increased the cost. And yeah, that is definitely way too much. And unfortunately, I think that this new version of Bucky, I mean, he looks to kind of be unplayable right now. I'm not exactly sure. We'll have to actually see, what happens with the meta, but it makes him a lot more difficult to play now, being 3 costs especially. And then, I mean, the ward makes him easy to get rid of. And then the effect here is more or less the same, but I mean, these two things just really hurt Bucky. And then, so then this person and then people responded, yeah, I would have liked a flat ban. I understand why they wanted the card to still see play, but nuking from orbit, yeah, it essentially killed the card in play anyway. So a ban would have done a job. So a lot of people are voicing that they want to see a ban instead. And if you guys saw my last video, I talked a little bit about ban lists as well. And I personally don't want Lorcana to have a ban list ever. And I said in that video, I was hoping that they will never have a ban list. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but I do want to talk about the practical sense of Bucky and why I think that he is actually really nerfed right now. So everyone's agreeing the ban is better because you can just unban after you print better answers. No one wants to pull up the first erratas in the middle of the game, nor keep up with erratas. So yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, having a bunch of erratas definitely sucks, because you have these printed cards and you're playing them, and then the effect of the card may not actually be the actual true effect of the card because there's errata. And I do want to read a part that Ravensburger said right here. They said that errata is not something that they take lightly or something that they want to do too often. So we want to give some context for our plans. Errata and bans going forward will be planned to be effective at the hobby launch of the next set unless the change is deemed immediately necessary. And to say that they want to preserve a fun environment for the game and address cards that cause negative experiences for players at all levels. I definitely think a lot of people have been complaining about facing, Bucky Diablo decks having to discard a bunch of cards from their hand, which is totally fair, because I can totally see that being not a fun experience to play against. Yeah, and then Bucky's pretty notorious in the community for being, that the most annoying deck to face, or the most oppressive deck. And then they're also looking at a way to make printed versions of the updated cards. So it's cool that they can update it in the app and stuff too. But yeah, and then I'm gonna read some more comments here. This person made a funny comment here. Why don't they just make him 0-1 while they're at it? I mean, that they might as well at that point, because the way they nerfed him, the three things, like not just one but three nerfs, really hurt him. And I mean, honestly, if he was 0-1, I don't think he would make that much of a difference the way that he's nerfed right now anyways. Yeah, and then this person says right here, so any one of those errata changes would have been sufficient to nerf this card. I totally agree. This sort of heavy card alteration sets a really bad precedent. And I understand that a change was necessary. This isn't the right change though. They give the official reasoning from Ravensburger, and said that they can see that the change is a way to keep from having set bans and limits on cards, which I think is really cool. Ravensburger has just demonstrated that any card they don't like can be nuked at will. I think that he makes a really, really good point here, because basically, if you have some really powerful card, and then let's say like a new card that comes out, and then you spend a bunch of money to like buy this 4 copies of the card because you want to put in your deck, maybe the next day it just gets, you know, nerfed and just nuked. There's an errata, and it pretty much has like an unplayable effect now, right? So if that were to happen, I mean, that would suck. And going forward, all players, including myself, will kind of know in the back of our mind that Ravensburger can do this to any card. So there is no card that's safe. Going forward, buying cards, there's always going to be that like slight fear of like, okay, I'm like trying to buy these cards, but maybe they won't be good tomorrow because their effects are going to be changed. So never get attached to any one meta playstyle. Yeah, totally. Because if Big Brother Ravensburger doesn't like what you're doing, they don't even have to try and make a new card to balance the old ones. They'll just destroy a card completely to make an example of it. Yeah, I mean, I can totally see this person's point, and to an extent, I agree. I don't think that there's any right, like, correct path for this. A lot of people are saying that they would have preferred if Ravensburger just created a ban list and they just banned Bucky like outright, instead of making a route, or if they limited Bucky to like 1 or 2 or 3 copies instead of having all 4, which would reduce the consistency of Bucky, which may, which would definitely make him weaker, and there'd be less people playing him because of that less consistent aspect of him, of having less copies of him in your deck, because you might not be able to draw him. So yeah, I totally see that. I could be in denial here, but the way that I'm looking at this right now is that this may not be a good decision by Ravensburger, but it shows me their intent with Lorcana, and that is comforting to me. So what do I mean by that? When we look at a card like Diablo here, right? And Diablo is kind of the most famous card that combos with Bucky, because Diablo is a cheap 3-cost Floodborn that you can play on turn 3 right after you play Bucky on turn 2, right? And he has a Floodborn trait, so he's going to trigger Bucky's Squeak effect to make the opponent discard. And then Diablo, during each opponent's turn, whenever they draw a card while this card is exerted, you may draw a card, right? So this is kind of like the big legendary that really put Bucky like on the map and like made him really good because of Diablo, right? These two cards worked so well together, and the two of them, formed to get like teamed up together to create like this super destructive deck that is, taking over the meta in a competitive scene in Lorcana. So whenever they nerf Bucky, they also nerf Diablo. And I don't think anyone was complaining that Diablo is unfair. I think most people was complaining that Bucky was unfair. Sure, Diablo has the evasive, which means that only characters with evasive can challenge it, but you can just play something like a Smash, which can do direct damage and just defeat the Diablo, right? There's many ways to knock it out without having an evasive character. It was the Bucky that was really terrifying, I guess. So Diablo is a new card that came out in set 4. Whenever they nerf Bucky, they also nerf Diablo. And the way that I'm seeing it right now is that nerfing Diablo means that there's less people that want to buy Diablo, and that kind of means that Ravensburger is not, I feel like they kind of know that when they do that, this meta deck, this really expensive deck, is going to drop in price now. And I feel like because of that, Ravensburger seems to be prioritizing the longevity in the game of Lorcana versus making money. And obviously, I understand that, TCGs, trading card games, they're all about making money at the end of the day. Like, that's why, the game exists. That's why the game can keep on going. But it's comforting to me to know that doing this errata does not help them financially, right? I think that banning them, in the future would help, right? Letting these the meta here exists, letting Diablo still be, a part of one of the strongest decks in the game, and people buying more set 4 cards like Ursula's Return and stuff, I think that would help them make more money. But putting that errata or putting a ban on Bucky makes Diablo weaker, which means that their current set, the set 4 of Ursula's Return, is now going to sell a little bit less. So even though the errata may not have been the best decision, and there are many drawbacks, to the errata, which a lot of people pointed out, which I don't disagree with. To me, I feel like that their true intention with Lorcana is the good of the game and the positive experience that they're talking about up here, right? I don't think that anything that they said right here is a lie. I think that they truly mean that the errata is not something that they take lightly. They have not done it. And I think that if they do make bans like going forward, they will really, put some serious thought into it. And I don't think that they want to do erratas, and I don't think they want to do a ban list. And that would be really comforting to me to know that potentially they're trying to keep this game balanced and not have too much power creep in the game, right? Power creep is whenever the newer cards always are better and stronger than old cards, and every single card game has this, right? Every single trading card game has this. It's the way they make money, right? Because why would someone want to buy new cards if they're the same strength or weaker than older cards, right? So every single set of new cards always has power creep. But so far in Lorcana, I would argue that there hasn't been power creep. And obviously, Lorcana has been out for only 1 year. So it's way too early to say anything if there's power creep or not. But so far, from set 1 to set 2, set 3, and set 4, set 1 is really, in my opinion, the strongest set with all the key staples that you need, right? Like Maui, Hero to All, with Be Prepared, right? You can banish every single character that's in play, right? A Whole New World, you can draw back up to 7 cards, right? All those staples, in my opinion, are from set 1. And as a player that's getting into this game from set 4, I'm struggling building a lot of decks because I want to put in those set 1 cards I don't have access to. So I feel like the fact that every single set that's come out, yeah, there's really good cards, but I don't think they've ever matched set 1 in terms of having those key staples. And that's kind of encouraging to me. I mean, it kind of sucks as a player because I don't have access to those cards anymore, because I can't buy them like, anywhere I go, like at game stores or at Target or anything like that, but I can still get Versus Return everywhere I go because it's a newest set. But the fact that that's kind of how the game is situated, I think it gives hope to the future that potentially that this can be a game that's more balanced than any other card game. And I am someone that is deep in denial about stuff like this. If you guys watch my Marvel Champions content, you guys know that I believe that Marvel Champions has no power creep. Marvel Champions is a living card game in LCG, so it's a little bit different than a trading card game to where there doesn't necessarily need to be power creep because you're playing a solo mode or co-op, and you're not playing against other players. So I think that's kind of why it's a little bit more balanced. But if Lorcana can be that game that does not have power creep and never has a ban list, I think that would be incredible. And I think that everything that Ravensburger has done so far is showing that at least their intention is that they want to try to guide the game that way. Now, will it actually end up being that way? That's really hard to say, and that's a really hard task to ask of any game. But I think that if they can actually do that, even though they may make less money in the short run because people won't be immediately trying to buy new cards, I think the long run and the integrity of the game will be much higher, right? Like having a game to where you don't necessarily need all the new cards to compete with people, that would be really, really cool. And, I can definitely see the drawbacks of that as well, but no TCG has kind of done it this way. So it seems like there's a potential of Ravensburger trying to go through it this way, and I think that this errata with Bucky, it's kind of showing, at least me, that they do want to try to attempt to go this route. There's definitely a ton of drawbacks, right? The worst thing is if you know that a card that you really want is like good and then you buy them and the next day it gets errated, then that would be the worst thing ever. But hopefully they really keep true to this, where erratas is not something that they want to take lightly, and hopefully they don't do it often, and hopefully whenever they plan for cards in the future, they will really try to balance out these cards before releasing them. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts here. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree or disagree with that? Do you guys think that they should have just banned Bucky? I can totally see the case for that. I think that probably would have been better just for like right now, and especially in the short run. But I think that the precedent actually is better that they errated Bucky, because it kind of shows that their intention for the game is to have Lorcana keep its integrity and to not have that power creep and to not have cards that outbalance other cards and make the playing experience not fun for new players and old players. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video.